Well, greetings out there in YouTube land. Have I got a video for you? When you see this fine decorator sheet covering something, you know you're in for something good. Quite a few viewers have been contacting me over the past few months asking for my opinion about these really inexpensive tube amplifiers that seem to be flooding the market, no doubt from China. There are a bunch of them that are very similar to little Fender Champs. They have an 8-inch Celestion speaker, a 5-watt tube circuit, and are of pretty good quality. I think I felt like most people that any tube amp, brand new, for less than $100 is really not exactly going to be a Dumble overdrive, okay? So I kind of turned my nose up at them. And then finally a viewer said, look, I'll go ahead and buy one and send it to you. Why don't you do a side-by-side comparison between the little $99 amp and say an original Fender Champ? And such a comparison could include overall fit and finish and quality of components, weight, and sound, of course, which would be really the most important. So let's do that. If that sounds exciting, I have a brand new Stage Right $99.99 amp here, still in the original box, that we can open and check it out real close and then do a side-by-side comparison with a really nice old early 70s Silverface Champ that I've had for years. Now I know you'd rather go watch those old bats on The View or something like that, or maybe even some Russian pole dancers, but if you can tear yourself away from that highbrow entertainment, then I think you might enjoy our video. If so, stay tuned. Since my trusty machete is at the cleaners, I will use an equally trusty steak knife to open the box. It's the old box in the box trick. Fortunately, we got to the last of the boxes. It looks like the bottom of the amp is upward, so let me pull it out, turn it over, and we'll take a look. And there it is, very nicely packed. It also is fairly darn heavy. I'm going to go weigh it. It weighs about twice as much as I expected. Then let's unwrap it and get a close look at it up on the table. Okay, here's the great unveiling. And I think it looks pretty nice. It also weighs 17 pounds. Which is almost exactly the same as the little that metal Art Deco head that I just finished in a previous video series. Okay, I'm going to go to handheld camera here so that we can get a close-up view of every inch of this little beast. Okay, here's the top. A really nicely stitched, plush, soft leather handle with great-looking hardware. This may be the best amp handle I've ever seen in my life. Okay, who would have guessed it, huh? We have the recessed finishing washers here on these screws, which I'm guessing are holding the chassis in the top of the cabinet. We have the corner protectors, which are screwed on, not riveted on. And then kind of a strange raised pattern here, which I really like. Okay, the white, I don't know how practical that is. After you spilled a few drinks and put out some cigarettes, it's going to look you know, a little unsightly, but until then it looks great. And no matter how much he begs, he must promise me you'll never loan one of these to Keith Richards. And here's the surprisingly nice control panel. They want you to know who built it, SR, Stage Right, and then their world famous logo. Get the standard toggle switch, pilot light, get a tone control, which the early Champs didn't have, volume, and then check this out. You have a choice of 1 watt output or 5 watt output. This is for Wembley Stadium, and this is for wowing your girlfriend, okay, when she visits you in your dorm room. Okay, and then of course our trusty input. No 4 inputs with different impedance. One's going to do it, and it generally does just fine. And look, really nice grill cloth. And they're not ashamed of the fact this jewel has a Celestion speaker. I don't blame them. One thing that impresses me though is they didn't just slap some adhesive on the back and stick it, you know, at a 45-degree angle on the grill cloth. They actually screwed it down. Now that took somebody who had to drill the pilot holes and then actually by hand screw this on. That's not what you see in items like this that are made to be sold at ridiculously low prices. Great looking rubber feet. I bet you were surprised they covered the bottom. They thought it was just going to be bare plywood. No. If you think I'm starting to get impressed, you're right. I've built enough amps that I can tell you I wouldn't be able to build this thing for 3 times $100. There's got to be a secret here. There's something sneaky going on. And of course all the legalese that is required and that nobody ever reads. Warning, to reduce risk of fire, electric shock, do not plug this in. Stuff like that. Okay, check this out. I haven't ever seen this before. External speaker impedance, 8 to 16 ohms. Okay, a very forgiving output transformer, but an output jack. Kind of crafty little louvers here that are screwed in. The Celestion Super 8 speaker. And the Velcro holder here for the cord. And of course, the instruction manual, which I will have to read from cover to cover so that I don't make any mistakes when hooking this beast up. Okay? We will actually take a look at this. Oh, and there's where it came from, I guess, Monoprice. Let's go take a look at the Monoprice site on the internet and see what they have to say about this. Here's a little 5-watt amp. It's the same exact one that's available on Monoprice, a site I'm not real familiar with. I guess it's like the Harbor Freight for electronics gear. $99.99 full price. And I particularly like this comment about the Celestion Super 8 speaker. It has blah blah blah, and something that's really in vogue I see now in some videos, surprisingly meaty bottom end. Okay, so I can't wait to encounter that. But this part right here is definitely no joke. After 154 reviews to average a full 5 stars, there must be something right about this little amplifier. So let's scroll down here and take a look at the breakdown. Well, it's 4.8 stars, but look at that, 126 people, 5 stars. The vast majority gave it the highest possible rating. 1 person, 1 star. You know, if you look at these reviews, a lot of times it's only the angry people that ever bother to do this for vengeance. Okay, so this amp must have just thrilled a whole bunch of purchasers. Either that, or as I said, I'm not familiar with Monoprice. Maybe they write all their own reviews. But either way, I find this and this to be a very impressive bit of statistics. Let's take a quick look here at the inside. Surely they cut a bunch of corners there. No, it's really nicely finished. It's kind of a rough, flat black. I like this. Warning, this appliance must be earthed. And something else I noticed is this Celestion wasn't made in Hong Kong, okay, it's Ipswich, England. Wow, it made a long trip, didn't it, over to, I guess, to China to be assembled in this amp. Okay, so that's it for right now until I can open it up and we'll take a look at the inner. Okay, I pull this back cover off, and if I'm going to nitpick, they sort of let that black paint smear around here in an uneven fashion, and also they trimmed that Naugahyde covering a little too close right there, and you can see a little wood underneath. But if that's all I can complain about, I think I could probably find worse things on brand new amps over at the Guitar Center. Okay, the chassis is very nicely painted and finished. The transformers are called New Ventec, which I am not familiar with. Two Chinese tubes, a 12AX7 and a 6V6. I'm assuming then there's some sort of diode rectification. And over here will be our output transformer. And it's a fairly stout one for a single 6V6 and also made by New Ventec. I think the wood is particle board. Not that that really matters, but it does actually give some weight to the cabinet. Actually, I'm very impressed by the fit and finish of this. It's about as good as any new amp you're going to see. Okay, time to remove whatever screws it takes to slide this chassis out, but I'm going to remove them, and we'll pull out the chassis and take a look at the innards of the circuit and see, do they have a printed circuit board? If they have point-to-point wiring in this, I think I'll just go kill myself, okay, because I will no longer be needed. You can get all your amps for $99 from China. It appears there's 4 machine screws on top and then sheet metal screws in the side. I'm going to guess that this going to the metal chassis and these going into the side reinforces the top, so there's no chance that as you're on your way to the big gig, the whole top doesn't just pull off the cabinet, okay? Which of course is always an embarrassing situation. Just think how an incident like that could have changed history. Where's your amp, Jimmy? Woodstock's about to begin. Oh, the damn screws came loose and the top pulled off and the thing fell out of the helicopter. Oh, well, I guess someone else is going to have to play the national anthem. Okay, with a little coaxing, I managed to get the chassis out of the cabinet. Nicely finished, completely, with tube restraints, nicely finished transformers. They even have like a shiny coating on the sides of the laminations. Really make it very attractive. Okay, let's turn it over and hold your breath. Before turning it over, I thought it would be wise to remove the 6V6, and the jaws of death there were holding it in place with such ferocity that I actually had to unscrew that retaining bear trap, and lo and behold, it looks like one of those Michael X tube sockets, and I think it's the same under the 12AX7. Okay, I can see here why the chassis was hard to get out. This cord was pinched between the bottom of the chassis and the speaker baffle. Okay, so with that tucked in, I have a feeling it's going to go back together easier than it came apart. Okay, now it's pretty much what you would expect. Okay, a printed circuit board with 1/4 watt resistors. Nice transformers, but you know as well as I do, this is maybe going to take quite a toll on the tone of this amp, but who knows? I don't. Okay, see, oh, they left the hairs from the hot glue, like the spider webs in the spooky house at Halloween. Okay, hard to believe. All it takes to make sound is on this little board. It's interesting that every single object that can possibly come loose is securely hot glued in place to keep that from happening, so that as you're tuning up for your recording session at Daryl's place, you're not going to have a plug just miraculously fall away from your printed circuit board. One more observation, you know you're dealing with a 6V6 in a Champ when you see a nice 5 watt 470 ohm cathode bias resistor. That's a nice little touch, a hum adjust. Of course, I imagine they would dread the thought of any young fellow opening this up and doing the adjustments on the hum adjust, but it's there. And notice also all metal film resistors. Pretty good quality capacitors too. I'd say this is about as far apart as it needs to be. So why don't I go grab that Silverface Fender Champ and we'll make some direct comparisons. Well, here they are side by side, and I think it's fairly obvious that the Champ is 5 inches wider, weighs 5 pounds more, and probably costs about 5 times as much. But what really matters here is how they sound. But if you can get a really good little practice amp for less than $100, does it really matter that it's smaller or lighter than a vintage Fender Champ? Really what matters is the purpose that it can serve for you. And if it can serve that purpose well, then I think we need to know about it. And I think the reason it may be able to perform that purpose well is that the makers focused on the single most important part of any amplifier. And that's not the tubes, it's not the capacitors, it's the speaker. They put some money into the speaker, and I think we're going to see that it's going to pay off. In the interest of fairness, the Champ is totally original. Original tube set, original speaker. It even has an original 3-prong cord. Okay, so I really think sound-wise we can make a legitimate side-by-side comparison. Now before we go much further, I think it's really only fair to say that a direct comparison between this little $99 amp and a Silverface Fender Champ is not a fair comparison. The amp that's probably most like this little stage right amp would be the Fender Champion 600 reissue, which was produced, I believe, back around 2007 to 2010. The selling price is almost double what our little stage right amp costs, but overall I have a feeling that inside and outside they're very, very close to being equal. If you go down the line here, and I'm also going to bet you that if you pull this chassis, you're going to have a printed circuit board and a circuit that's going to look pretty much like the one we just saw looks. Now I don't have one of these to make a sound comparison, and also you can't buy them anyway because they quit making them back around 2010. In all honesty, you can't buy a Fender Champ either unless you want to step up for a boutique model. I didn't even realize till I did some research, but they quit making Fender Champs back in 1982. So you got to go back a ways to get one to make a comparison. But there is no doubt that the little stage right amp and the Fender Champion 600 were really created based on the original Champ circuit. And the only original Champ circuit I happen to have here is the Silverface that you just saw. So we're going to use that for a sound comparison, and I think it's only fair that if the little $99 amp can come even close, even remotely close to that Silverface Champ, that it should be considered a major victory for the little stage right amp. Well, it looks like Jack's having a hot time in the stage right box. Just like a kid, he prefers the box to the actual item that was in the box. It looks like he's quite at home. Jack, are you in that box? No, maybe I'm wrong. Jack, are you in that stage right box? No, I thought I saw a tail, but it's gone. Well, we'll have to look elsewhere, I guess. Okay, here we are with the two competitors side by side. Since the little stage right amp is kind of the unknown quantity here, why don't we get acquainted with it before we start the comparison. As you can see, I have both the volume and tone straight up at 5 out of 10. That attenuator switch is out at 5 watts. Now, we want to get clear what this does. It attenuates the input, not the output. Okay, it's going to suppress the signal from the guitar to the amp rather than the output from the 6v6. But it should have about the same overall effect in that we can overdrive the amp at lower volume if we use the 5-watt button out. The guitar is set at about 8 out of 10 on volume and tone. Let's see how it sounds. Really nice breakup, and that's at 5 out of 10 volume. Now let's try it with that attenuator button in at 1 watt. As expected, cleaner and lower gain. So that button does give you quite a bit of versatility. I've read on the internet that some people think that the little amp can benefit from being connected to a larger speaker. Let's face it, that can be said about any amp, but let's try it. I'm going to hook this up then to my shop speaker and see how it sounds. Okay, we're connected to the 12-inch Alnico shop speaker, and I'm back to the 5-watt unattenuated input with all the other settings the same. Again, nice breakup. I think a little fuller tone, I'd have to say, from the 12-inch, but what do you expect? A 12-inch compared to an 8-inch speaker. Now let's push in the attenuator button to 1 watt and see how it sounds. Well, as before, cleaner and less gain. So the little button does give you quite a bit of versatility. Let's have one final comparison with the little stage right amp of the 5-watt versus 1-watt setting. The first tune will be 5-watt. And we might as well hear the Champ before the comparison begins. The volume is at 4 and treble and bass are both set at 5. And now it's time to turn over the guitar to our two experts, Ollie and Jack, and they will serenade us with some side-by-side comparison tunes. Well, I guess that's about it. Wait a minute, just a second. Oh, well, Ollie and Jack insist they want one more chance at a ZZ Top medley. Okay, they've been working on it, so let's give them a chance. See what you think. Man, those cats, they're too much. Okay, that's about it for this comparison, and unlike CNN and network news, I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'll just let you make up your own minds about this. Okay, we've seen a very careful inspection of the Stage Right amp at $99. Then we've heard a sound comparison between it and a vintage Fender Champ. Also, to spice things up, I'm going to pick a name from my Patreon patron list and send them this amp for free. Okay, so we'll have the drawing in the very near future, and I will announce the winner, and then I will pack this jewel up in the original box with the owner's manual and send it to the lucky Patreon patron. So if you'd like to get on the Patreon patron list or become a PayPal contributor of our advertising free channel, Jack, Ollie, and I would greatly appreciate it. And we, regardless, do appreciate the time you spend watching our videos and subscribing to them. And we hope to see you again in the very near future.